When you think about America's space and defense industry, companies building rockets, satellites, next-gen weapons, there's this really powerful, almost universal belief. If you're not a U.S. citizen, the door is just slammed shut. And it seems logical, right? We're talking about national security, super sensitive tech. But what if that belief, as common as it is, isn't the whole story? What if the rules are way more nuanced and the reality is actually a lot more interesting?
This whole idea was perfectly summed up back in 2016 by Elon Musk. Someone asked him why SpaceX doesn't hire more internationally, and he pointed the finger right at U.S. government regulations, specifically something called ITAR. And for a lot of people, that was it. That statement became the final word, just reinforcing the idea that a company's hands are completely tied.
So here's what's really fascinating. The source material for this explainer has this brilliant way of describing Musk's statement. It says, it's like playing a familiar song that sounds right, but it's just slightly off. The notes are there, but it's in the wrong key. It's technically true, but it's also deeply misleading, because the details you leave out can change absolutely everything.
Okay, so let's flip the lights on. Let's get to the bottom of this whole misconception by asking the most fundamental question there is: who can legally work at a company that's dealing with all this sensitive technology?
Right. Before we can really understand the game, we have to know who the players are. And in the world of export controls, the definitions, well, they're everything. These rules aren't made up by the companies themselves. They come straight from the U.S. government. So we need to look at exactly what the regulations say. So the first and most important definition you got to know is U.S. person. Now, according to the International Traffic in Arms Regulations, that's ITAR, a U.S. person is not just a citizen, and this is huge. It explicitly includes lawful permanent residents, what most of us just call green card holders, and another category called protected individuals.
And of course, the flip side of this is the definition of a foreign person. It's really simple. It's basically anyone who doesn't meet that U.S. person definition. The distinction in the law is crystal clear. It's not about where you were born. It's all about your current legal status right here in the United States.
So you might be asking, okay, what about that term protected individual? This is a really key piece of the puzzle that often gets overlooked. U.S. law actually defines it to include not just citizens and nationals, but also, again, lawful permanent residents, plus refugees and asylees.
Okay, so let's just lay it all out nice and simple. For the purpose of working with ITAR-controlled stuff without needing any kind of special permission, the term U.S. person covers citizens, green card holders, refugees, and asylees. So right away, you can see that whole myth that it's citizens only just starts to crumble. The pool of talent that's legally eligible is so much wider than most people think.
But hold on a second. If that's the law, why do so many companies, including giants like SpaceX, still say they can't hire non-citizens? Well, this isn't just some simple misunderstanding. There are massive, real-world hurdles that make these companies extremely cautious, even when the law says it's okay.
And believe me, the hurdles are huge. You've got everything from specific government contracts that do require U.S. citizenship for classified work, to the insane cost and complexity of securing your IT networks and your physical buildings. And on top of all that, you have the crippling penalties if you accidentally mess up, the risk of disrupting your whole company's workflow, and, the simple fact that leadership might just look at all this and say, it's just not worth the headache. So it's not that it's illegal, it's that for many companies, it just feels way too hard.
Okay, so we've seen that the U.S. person category is broader than we thought, but the practical hurdles are sky high. This brings us to the next layer of the onion. What about people who are clearly foreign persons, like an expert here on a work visa? Is the door really, truly locked and bolted for them? Well, not quite. This is where we get to that special permission that Elon Musk mentioned.
And this is the big question, isn't it? If a company is actually willing to jump through all those hoops, what is the official, legal way to allow a foreign national to handle sensitive, ITAR-controlled information?
The answer has a name: a DSP-5 license. This is the specific tool the U.S. government provides to make this happen. It's not some secret back channel or a loophole. It is a formal, established process for this exact situation: a foreign employee who needs access to ITAR tech for their job.
So think of the DSP-5 like a carefully controlled key to one very specific room, not the keys to the whole building. A company applies to the Department of State, and if it's approved, the license doesn't grant some kind of blanket security clearance or unlimited access. No way. It authorizes the release of specific, very well-defined technical data for a specific job. And it all has to be governed by a super strict Technology Transfer Control Plan, or TTC, that the company has to follow to the letter.
So when you put all these pieces together,
The correct legal definitions, the real-world company challenges, and the official government licenses, the whole story changes. It shifts from "it's impossible" to "it's incredibly difficult, but here's how it's done." This is what our source material calls the art of the possible.
So what does that recipe for success actually look like? Well, first, it has to start with real motivation from the company. Leadership has to be all in. Then you absolutely need the secure infrastructure, both digital and physical. You must have a rock-solid technology control plan. And finally, you need that explicit stamp of approval from the US government, like getting that DSP-5 license. When you have all those ingredients in place, hiring the best global talent suddenly becomes a real possibility.
So the big takeaway here isn't that the rules are simple. They're not. It's that they are navigable. That widespread belief that foreign nationals are completely locked out, it's just an oversimplification. It's a story that's being told with some of the most crucial details left out. And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. In a world where talent is everywhere and the challenges we face are bigger than ever, isn't it time for more companies to start telling the whole story?